Okay. Thank you again, Dar, for sending me yet another topic that I can address in my videos. Honestly, I think I owe you like 100 subs and quite a few views by now, but the best I can do is offer my thanks. So, if you guys on YouTube are like me and constantly going to Daronak's channel like you should be and checking out his video content, his latest series of videos addresses one of the more recent things that have hit the news, and that is the Troy Davis case. For those of you who are living under a rock, Troy Davis was a man who was charged with the murder of an off duty cop, and he was sentenced to die. And he was executed yesterday. And the interesting thing about this case was that he was convicted based mainly upon circumstantial evidence, which included eyewitness testimony, and the bullets at the scene did match a 38 caliber gun that he did supposedly own, but the gun itself that was used in the murder was never actually found. Many people are already upset at this show of injustice, but to make matters worse, Ann Coulter decided to write an article about the Troy Davis case. I'll be honest with you guys, I didn't even know who Ann Coulter was until I heard about her through Darnak's video. And it turns out she's actually pretty infamous around not only the internet, but around news forums as well. And I believe she is living proof that you can have an education, and a fairly good one at that, considering how she graduated from both Cornell and the Michigan Law School. You can still have an education and still be a blithering idiot. So, I guess I'm switching it up this video, because instead of poning a video, I'm going to pwn an article. For decades, liberals tried persuading Americans to abolish the death penalty using their usual argument: hysterical sobbing. Now, I gather that you guys probably think that I take offense to this statement because of the patronizing and rather arrogant way she worded it. And I really don't care, because I sometimes do it myself. But what I do take offense to is that she groups all people who are not supportive of the death penalty as liberals, which isn't true, and she supports the notion that there are no real objections to the death penalty. And that's not true either. There are plenty of reasonable, logical, and very much relevant objections to the death penalty. For one, it's expensive. Number two, if a miscarriage of justice happens, what then? And number three, it does nothing to really deter the crime rate in the first place. These are all legitimate reasons to stand against the death penalty, and she addresses none of these in not only this article, but none of her other articles as well. Only when the media began lying about innocent people being executed did support for the death penalty begin to waver, falling from 80% to about 60% in a little more than a decade. Silver lining, that's still more Americans that believe in man-made global warming. Okay, so first off, I don't know what stance you take with the issue of global warming. If you seem to think it's just some sort of conspiracy and you want to ignore all scientific evidence in front of you, that's your problem. But it has absolutely nothing to do with the issue at hand. Second, if you're talking about the media, aren't you implicating yourself as well, considering how you are a columnist and therefore you are part of the media as your job? 59% of Americans now believe that an innocent man has been executed in the last 5 years. There is more incredible evidence that space aliens have walked among us than that an innocent person has been executed in this country in the past 60 years, much less the past 5 years. Oh, really now? Are you going to really say that with a straight face? I didn't think so. But unless members of the public are going to personally review trial transcripts in every death penalty case, they have no way of knowing the truth. The media certainly wouldn't tell them. It's nearly impossible to receive a death sentence these days, unless you do something completely crazy like shoot a cop in full view of dozens of witnesses in a Burger King parking lot only a few hours after shooting at a passing car while exiting a party. That's what Troy Davis did in August 1989. Davis is the media's current baby seal of death row. First off, it was allegedly Troy Davis that shot at the car. That wasn't actually proven. And the second thing is, it was also not sufficiently proven because reasonable doubt still exists that Troy Davis was the one who shot Officer McPhail in the first place. After a 2-week trial with 34 witnesses for the state and 6 witnesses for the defense, the jury of 7 blacks and 5 whites took less than 2 hours to convict Davis of Officer Mark McPhail's murder, as well as various other crimes. 2 days later, the jury sentenced Davis to death. Now, a brisk 22 years after Davis murdered Officer McPhail, his sentence will be finally administered this week, barring any more of the legal shenanigans that have kept taxpayers on the hook for Davis's room and board for the past 2 decades. The average time on death row is 14 years. Then liberals turn around and triumphantly claim the death penalty doesn't have any noticeable deterrent effect. As the kids say, duh. So what exactly do you mean by that? Are you saying we should just execute people right away? What happened to finding some more evidence to appeal your case? I guess you think that's just a waste of time. I mean, oh, sure, everyone who's convicted is actually guilty. We all know the justice system has failed. We all know how many people get exonerated for crimes they didn't actually commit. And yet you're willing to just execute the person who gets convicted of a certain crime just because the judge and the jury say so. Well, you know what? That's not how the justice system works. It's twisted to think that it works that way, and you are a twisted person if you think we should just kill everyone on sight who's actually convicted of murder. It has been claimed in the New York Times and Time magazine, for example, that there was no physical evidence connecting Davis to the crimes that night. Davis pulled out a gun and shot 2 strangers in public. What physical evidence were they expecting? No houses were broken into, no cars stolen, no rapes or fistfights accompanied the shootings. Where exactly would you look for DNA? And to prove what? Oh, physical evidence. Gee, let me think about that. How about the gun that was actually used in both the shootings and the murder? How about that? They never found the gun. They never actually even found any murder weapon connecting Davis to the murder. Forget about DNA. That's kind of a luxury at this point. All they have to do is find gunshot residue on his hands. All they had to do is find his fingerprints on the gun that they never even recovered. I suppose it would be nice if the shell casings from both shootings that night matched. Oh wait, they did. That's physical evidence. No, because you still need to prove that Davis was the one that used the gun in the first place. You still need to link the gun used in both shootings to Davis. And have you done that? No, you haven't. It's true that the bulk of the evidence against Davis was eyewitness testimony. That tends to happen when you shoot someone in a busy Burger King parking lot. Eyewitness testimony, like all evidence tending to show guilt, has gotten a bad name recently. But the eyewitness testimony in this case did not consist simply of strangers trying to distinguish one tall black man from another. For one thing, several of the eyewitnesses knew Davis personally. The bulk of the eyewitness testimony established the following. 2 young black men were harassing a vagrant in the Burger King parking lot. One in a yellow shirt and the other in a white Batman shirt. The one in the white shirt used a brown revolver to pistol whip the vagrant. When a cop yelled at them to stop, the man in the white shirt ran, then wheeled around and shot the cop, walked over to his body and shot him again, smiling. Some eyewitnesses described the shooter as wearing a white shirt, some said that it was a white shirt with writing, and some identified it specifically as a white Batman shirt. Not one witness said the man in yellow shirt pistol whipped the vagrant or shot the cop. You know, I'd like to see some sources to case files, In law, you generally do source all your information like you do in most other studies. So if you're going to write an article like this, I'd expect to see some sort of citations. And yet you provide absolutely none, so I'm expected to take your word for it. And judging by the biased nature of this article to begin with, I'm going to have to say, regretfully, that I don't take your word for it. Several of Davis's friends testified without recantation that he was the one in a white shirt. Several witnesses, both acquaintances and strangers, specifically identified Davis as the one who shot Officer McPhail. Now the media claim that 7 of the 9 witnesses against Davis at trial have recanted. First of all, the state presented 34 witnesses against Davis, not 9, which should give you some idea of how punctilious the media are about their facts in death penalty cases. Among the witnesses who did not recant a word of their testimony against Davis were 3 members of the Air Force who saw the shooting from their van in the Burger King drive-in lane. The airman who saw the events clearly enough to positively identify Davis as the shooter explained on cross-examination, "You don't forget someone that stands over and shoots someone." Sources, please. I want to see some sources, and yet you still provide none. Are we just expected to take your word for it? And incidentally, speaking of the witnesses, you do know that most of them did recant, and the only 2 that did, one of them was the other major suspect of the crime. I don't think you mentioned that, now did you? And incidentally, even if 1 of the witnesses out of 9 or out of 34, even if 1 of them recanted their testimony, you don't know how important that could be. That could be case changing, depending on the credibility of the argument completely thrown in question. I mean, it all depends from case to case. And to say that, oh, just because 1 person recanted their testimony doesn't mean that it's completely untrue. You never know. You never know, because maybe out of the 34, only that 1 person claims to actually have seen Davis commit the murder. And yet if he's recanting that, then that's pretty damn groundbreaking. Recanted testimony is the least believable evidence, since it only proves that defense lawyers managed to pressure some witnesses to alter their testimony, conveniently after the trial has ended. Even criminal lobbyist Justice William Brennan ridiculed post-trial recantations. Okay, I don't even know who the hell this Justice William Brennan is, but you also failed to mention that there have been plenty of instances where police officers intimidate or have been intimidated to make certain claims that they didn't actually see. They've been forced and pressured at times, and they also pressure and force other people to make changes to their testimony. It's called police intimidation, lady. Haven't you ever heard of it?